Hey guys, sorry I missed you today. Let's go through everything so you don't miss a thing. Now, first thing we want to talk about again is where to go and put that reading goal proof. So do me a favor, go ahead and go to your workshop task list, click on step number 5, task number 5, and scroll down to that first pink box you see. So in your workshop task list, go ahead and click on that first link and scroll down to this pink box right here. We talked about it yesterday. Let's go ahead and talk about it again. Right here, this is where you're going to add your proof. This is going to add your book titles, your number of pages, your dates finished, or your 8 Newsella article titles, or your dates taken, and your quiz scores, or if you've got a Google Doc that's got your proof on it, this is where you want to go ahead and drop in a link. And a little reminder, if you're going to send me that Google Doc link, make sure that it's shared with me. Otherwise, when I click on the link, I don't get anything and you get a 0. So make sure I have editing access or at least viewing access to it, please, and thank you. Also, don't forget in that bottom box, we need 2 to 4 sentences here about how this goal helped you grow as a reader. So you know what? I'm actually going to pause right now and let you fill that in. Excellent. Now, let's go on and let's actually go ahead and open up your draft. So we need you to go in to your task list, your green Google Doc. Let's go down to step 3 or 4, but let's go at least to step 3 so we can open up your draft wherever your draft is. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little mini lesson today about commas with introductory elements. So here we go. When writing, we need to understand when and why we need commas. And today's comma rule is this. You need to place a comma after a word, phrase, or clause that introduces the main part of your sentence. So this could look one of 3 ways. The first way this could look is if you go ahead and you drop in a comma after a word that introduces the main part of a sentence. Typically, this one word is an adverb. It's a verb that describes something that's happening and it ends in ly. So, for example, if you were running, how are you running? Quickly. You were running quickly. So the word quickly ends in ly and describes how you were running. Or let's say you were sleeping. How are you sleeping? Fitfully. Maybe you were sleeping fitfully. Fitfully ends in ly, and the fitfully is describing how you were sleeping. So an adverb is typically that one word that ends in ly that says how the rest of the main part of the sentence was done. In this case, here's our example, right? So our example says, warily, comma, the young woman climbed the stairs. And this is again where the young woman climbed the stairs, but the question is, how did she do it? This is where that one word adverb that ends in the ly comes in. Warily, the young woman climbed the stairs warily. So warily, the young woman climbed the stairs. Now, a little heads up and a little hint. The sentence begins with that single word that introduces the main part of the sentence by telling how it is done. This is the one way we can use commas with introductory elements. Another way we can use commas with introductory elements is using a comma after a phrase that introduces the main part of a sentence. Now, a phrase is a group of words that might have a noun, but no verb, or might have a verb, but no noun, or it might not actually have either. But in our case here, it's probably going to be a prepositional phrase, which is going to be a phrase that's going to say when, where, how, or why something happened, or where or when something is. So if we think about this, I could go ahead and say maybe before the game. In that case, that's telling us before the game. The game is our noun. We don't have a verb, but it's giving us an essence of time. It's saying before. Or I could say on the shelf. In that case, again, I've got my noun, my shelf, but I don't have a verb, but it is telling me where. It's saying on. So in this case, a phrase could either have a word, could either have a noun but no verb, a verb but no noun, or neither, but it's probably going to be a prepositional phrase. So if I gave you an example, I could go ahead and say this. I could say, on the other hand, comma, maybe I'm right. The main part of that sentence there is, maybe I'm right. But I can actually add something in front of it that says, on the other hand, and if you think about it, on the other hand, it's got a hand, it's got a noun, but no verb. So this is an introductory element that's describing something about the fact of maybe I'm right. Now, a little hint, this sentence begins again with that prepositional phrase, which is also a transition, and then finishes the thought. This is the second way we could use introductory elements. The final way we could use introductory elements is actually with a clause that introduces the main part of a sentence. Now, a clause is a group of words that has both a noun and a verb, and it's talking about something. And sometimes a clause can stand on its own as its own sentence. That's called an independent clause. I went to the store. That stands on its own complete sentence. On the other hand, sometimes we have a dependent clause. A dependent clause is one of those sentences that starts to say something that's going to be happening, and then it kind of just it trails off. It can't stand on its own. So if somebody said, like, before the game, and you're like, yeah, what about before the game? Or if someone said, on top of the bookshelf, at which point you'd say, well, yeah, what's on top of the bookshelf? It's those incomplete thoughts that kind of tell us, hey, there's something else coming, because it's dependent. It's dependent on the main part of a sentence. So that would be a dependent clause. That's what we're working with here. My example here could be, when the commotion dies down, comma, we will see things more clearly. Now, the main part of my sentence is, we will see things more clearly. But the question is, how or when? I actually have a dependent clause here that says, when the commotion dies down, oh, that's when we'll see things more clearly. It tells us we'll see things more clearly when the commotion dies down. Remember, if we had that dependent clause all by itself, it'd be very confusing. When the commotion dies down, yeah, what? What happens when the commotion dies down? Oh, we'll see the situation a little bit more clearly, right? So, a little heads up here when it comes to one final hint. The sentence begins with a clause, a group of words, with a subject and a verb that can't stand alone because it's a dependent clause. The sentence is then finished with what will happen once that thing takes place. So, this is your third type of introductory element. I'm actually leaving a link to notes about this mini lesson here. It's the first link down here in the video. You might want to go ahead and take a look at that now. Great. So now actually, I want you to prove it. Do me a favor and find a sentence in your draft, either in the main paragraph, the intro, the conclusion, that uses an introductory element. Don't worry, if you don't have one, time to add one right now. Your grade kind of hinges on it. Next thing you want to do is make sure that if you're in an honors section, make sure you've got an introductory phrase or clause, not just a word, because we want you to go a little bit above. And also just check to make sure that your punctuation is correct. So you got that comma in the right spot. Once you've done that, we actually kind of want you to prove it with this guy. So I'd love for you to fill out your form so I could go ahead and make sure that I give you feedback to tell you if you're doing this correctly before, you turn in your final essay. And hey, do this, I can get you a little bit closer to an A. So the link for this document is actually, it's the second link in the chat or in the description. So go ahead and do me a favor, go ahead and click on that right now. Excellent, thank you. Now, what we did end up doing today is we did do strategy groups to try and give you a little bit of fine tuning on your paper before you turn it in. But since you weren't here, feel free to click on any of the links here if you think that they are going to be helpful, right? But that kind of brings us here for Learning Lab. So this is what you've got to do, right? So what we're making sure of is, first of all, you revise your draft based on strategy groups from the breakout room. If you need to, go ahead and click through those links for whatever you think is going to help you. Then we want you to copy paste into task 5. Your intro, your middle claim paragraph, and your conclusion. We're going to put that all right here in task 5 and just go ahead and copy paste them in right here where it says go ahead and put your work. You're going to have 3 paragraphs and done. Step 3, use your editing check sheet. This is the third link. And remember, that third link, it's in the description of the video. Please click it. Go ahead and use that editing check sheet to go through and make sure that you're editing for all of your editing rules for this essay. Then go ahead and make sure you got your proof for your reading goal. Your proof for your reading goal right there. Make sure that you drop it in at the very bottom of that green Google Doc. And those 2 boxes, just like we've talked about. And hey, little heads up. Remember, this needs to be turned and submitted before you come back to class. Remember, this means that if you have class on an A day, on Tuesday, the 17th, it's due the minute before class begins. So if you're in third block and class typically begins at 12:31, this is due at 12:30. If you're in fifth block and you got class on a B day, so this would be due on the 18th, and your B day class, fifth block typically starts at 9 a.m., it's actually due on the 18th at 8:59 a.m. Heads up there. And that's it. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Otherwise, good luck. You got this.